I want to remind you of some of the procedures that we have. How do I? Oh, excuse me. Okay. All right. I want to go over some of the procedures. The appeal of the decisions from the Historic Zoning Commission pursuant to the provisions. Hold on, I've messed my screen up now here.
And your microphone.
Do I?
Microphone.
Your microphone's
It is on.
It is on. I've put something else on my screen now. Bear with me, I'll get with it in a minute. Pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Law, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before the Commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County by way of a statute writ of certiorari. All right. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decisions of the Historic Zoning Commission. And this afternoon, let me get that.
I'm just all over you.
Hold on. We don't have any council members here. I didn't think I've seen them. Okay. Have the approval of the minutes for February the 18th. Any corrections or revisions to those minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. The overlay, we don't have any. The consent agenda. The consent agenda will be presented as a list of items that have been put on the consent agenda that will be approved with one vote. If any of you are here, would like anything pulled from the consent agenda and hear the full presentation, please raise your hand and we'll pull that off the consent agenda. Any questions? Not? Proceed.
One of the cases, item C, 1511 Dallas Avenue, staff is removing that from consent to regular business at the request of the applicant. We'll do that item first with new business.
That will be presented at the very beginning, the new business. Okay.
The remaining 6 cases on the consent agenda are as follows. 1504 Gartland Avenue, application for constructing an outbuilding with setback determination. 2812 27th Avenue South, new construction of an addition. 1906 Sweetbriar, constructing an addition. It's actually a revision to an approved plan on that. 205 Ensworth Avenue, application to construct a new outbuilding. 251 Lauderdale Road, application to construct an addition and outbuilding. And 1401 Ashwood Avenue, application to construct an addition. Staff reviewed these applications, find they all meet their respective design guidelines, and recommend approval.
Seeing that none of these items should be pulled off with the exception of 1511 Dallas, do I hear any discussion on the consent agenda? Not. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval with staff's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
I tried.
Opposed? Consent agenda is adopted as presented. We don't have any previously deferred items, so we'll go right back into the new business of the day. 1511 Dallas.
Okay. This item, 1511 Dallas Avenue, is an application to construct a rear addition to a historic house. The addition will tie into the rear wall of the house, the rear roof below and behind the existing ridge, and will go back and then rise up 3 feet 8 inches taller than the original historic house at the rear portion. This taller portion of the addition is, as I said, behind the historic structure, and it begins at a point 40 feet back from the front of the house. The addition will be distinguished from the historic house by setting in the walls of the addition from those of the house, and then after going back, again, we'll step out to match the width of the historic house. the height and scale of the addition staff finds to be compatible with that of the historic house and meet the guidelines. However, the application also indicates that the window pattern on the right side of the house will be altered by taking an existing window, dotted outline there, and sliding it forward a few feet and adding a new window in behind that. Staff considers the alteration of an original window pattern to be partial demolition, which would not meet the design guidelines. The addition would meet the material sections of the design guidelines with the condition that the unknown materials are approved by staff. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed addition with conditions that the existing window pattern be retained and that staff approves the material selections, windows, doors, and roof color prior to purchase and installation. Meeting those conditions, staff finds that this project meets the applicable design guidelines for the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay.
Okay, before we open the public hearing, do you all have any questions of staff?
Sean, quick one. I don't think I'm looking at this wrong, but perhaps I am. It appears in the photograph of the existing residence, there's a single column on the porch, and the proposed front street elevation has double columns, which I know it may not be uncommon for a house of this vintage. But was there any photographic evidence, I guess, or anything else by the applicant that would necessitate that change, or is that just a preference?
I took that to be a preference. The porch on this house to me didn't appear, it appeared anachronistic to the rest of the style of the house. It's more of a craftsman porch column. It appered to me not to be original, so alteration was sort of, the door was open to that.
Very good.
Okay. On that, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to come forth and comment on this? Would you come forward and give your name and your address, please?
My name is Moyo Suarez, and I'm the homeowner of 1511 Dallas. And yeah, like Sean said, the only thing that I really want to change is the window being moved to the front. And I'll just be completely honest with you. I just got engaged, so this is my fiance's request. She doesn't really like the idea of walking, yeah, y'all can understand, of walking in the master bedroom and walking into the bed. So there's really only one wall right now with the layout of where we could put a bed, that was the idea of moving the window so that we could put the bed between the two windows. I've got a printout that actually has measurements if it helps visualize a little better, because I know it's not up on the screen anymore. I can show you guys exactly what I'm referring to, but basically that's really the only reason for the window being moved. Also, there's existing vinyl windows, and I'd like to change those to a more historic wood window. So while we were changing them, I figured that would be the best time to go ahead and move the window.
Were those windows in the proposed, John? Changing out the windows?
The existing windows are not original, although their locations and proportions are.
Well, I know, but he's asking to change those, but we would approve the wooden windows.
Yes, that would be all right.
All right. Thank you. Do you all have any questions of the homeowner? If not,
Do you want to see this paper?
okay. Why don't you we'll just pass your dimensions around. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. All right, I'll close, if there are no other comments, then I'll close the public hearing and open up discussion among the commission.
Sorry. While y'all passing that, can I ask him a question?
Sure, absolutely.
I should have done that. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure where your master bedroom is. Is it where these two windows are that you're trying to,
Exactly,
you're suggesting
yeah.
to be moved?
Right, so I'm only looking at the screen, but top right would be,
Right there.
yeah,
Okay.
and that's just an enlarged thing that I printed out so that
I
you
see.
can see
Okay.
a little better. So basically, when you walk in the master, the only place to put the bed right now, because of that window, is right when you walk in, which apparently is a no-no in my fiance's book. So the only way to move it is to put it between the windows, which would be the reason for moving the windows, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Sean, is the 40-foot dimension like a standard that we use for to the back of that?
Yes, that's standard coming from the italicized language in the guidelines talking about best practices. In order to have additional height, it's recommended that it be sufficiently set back, and 40 feet or 1 foot for each section of 10 feet seems to work, so that it really won't be visible. The additional height won't be visible from the front of the house because it's so far back.
Sean, could you show us the diagram, please, of the window rhythm that we're discussing here? Okay, thank you.
This dotted outline is the existing window.
Right.
And they would move that forward 4 feet and then add this window, which would be a new window. And on the floor plan, it's this window here moves, it gets closed in, and then a new window is added behind it there.
And you're suggesting that they retain the one window versus adding either the two, or retaining the one window and adding one window?
In following the guidelines say that altering window sizes is not appropriate. So keeping the one window here
Okay.
and not
Okay.
adding a new one.
And there's just that one window there, is that right?
Correct.
Right. Before we get very confused over something simple, we're adding a window and moving a window, right?
Yes.
So are we okay, is staff okay with adding the new window?
No.
Okay. And are we changing any window size? I think all we're changing here is placement. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Okay. So staff does not recommend to add the new window nor move the existing window.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Have there been any other projects that's been done to, that you know of on record?
I don't recall. It's very likely and certainly possible that there are some. Maybe we didn't catch it, or it was something that we didn't.
They were usually at the back of the building.
Yeah.
The guidelines really are looking at retaining the historic character of the building, so you don't want a lot of alterations that change that character, and certainly windows and doors are an important feature of any building. And so that sort of front half of the house, you've always looked at that as fairly a sacred place where a lot of change shouldn't take place, but windows and doors have changed towards the back and certainly on the back. But I don't recall any this close to the front.
From my history, and I can reiterate that this certainly is, when you look at a straight-on elevation of the house, which you never view it, that's certainly sacred, but this is viewed from the public right-of-way. This window or this location in the front of the house where they've chosen to locate the master bedroom and reconfigure the interior to make it work for their living arrangement, or their preferred living arrangement, is it certainly is discouraged, and I don't recall personally approving something of this nature in the past.
But the problem that I've got with moving the existing window up that far is it just doesn't look right to me. And I think it takes it out of the historic character of the building, the historic home, too much. It just looks odd, putting it way up there on the front. I know you're getting married and your you want the placement of the bed against a wall, and it's awkward to do it, but from the outside, it just looks odd going that far forward. I don't mind 2 windows being in there. The second window that they want to add, and I actually think that would look proportionate and not out of character, but the 1 window that I see there that they want to move forward is just odd to me.
Is it okay if I say something?
Okay.
I'm not done talking.
We've actually closed the public hearing.
Gotcha.
If y'all would like to open the public hearing and hear his comment.
Fine.
Okay, all right. All in favor? Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest if it's a big deal with the window being in the front, like y'all seem to all have said, is it okay to keep the one in the back? So basically move it to the back. So just 1 in the back. I don't know if that makes sense, but instead of moving that 1 forward and adding the other one, could we not just scratch adding the other window and just move the current window where it is to the back placement as you see?
Yeah, keep in mind, I mean, our task here is to retain the historic character of the original building. So just keep that sort of in the back of your mind.
I completely-
That's what we're charged with.
Completely agree. And I was going to say on the other side, you're right, it doesn't, on the other side of the house, I've got a window that's not as far forward as well. So maybe that would make everyone happy, I guess, if we could keep the one in the back, but not move that other one forward.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? If not,
Can I ask Sean a question? So the addition itself, and the staff is comfortable with the scale and the size of that and how it looks from the side? And I mean, we've seen pretty large stuff that sometimes we kind of regret doing, but is this something that you guys are comfortable with?
If you see the tallest portion at the back, there's the open porch with the enclosed area above it. Going into the roof plan, I actually lined this up. The roof plan is lined up with the side elevation below. That taller, kind of the 3-story or 2.5-story section is really set in pretty far into the sides. So the bigger chunk with the dormer on it is really going to hide the tallest portion behind it because it's set in so far. It's set in, I think, more than 10 feet on each side. So really, I think, I'll wake up the mouse. I think what you're going to see is here from the street. This is the front here you see, and this dormer here, this bigger part of the addition will set in, hide the part that's set in behind.
I guess I understand what Commissioner Fletcher has said as well, is that our guidelines is that the front or the facade is, or any addition is subordinate to the front. I believe that's what I'm hearing you say. So we just want to be very careful that we're not going beyond what we've done before.
okay.
Certainly, I hear what you're saying, and at first glance, that's a question of this project. As we were talking, I'm looking at page 2 of the staff's report, and in seeing what additions have been made, or certainly appear from the aerial map to have been made, this one is not completely out of scale with the neighbors a couple of doors down on either side, or it certainly doesn't appear to be when comparing the size of the original house, and you kind of a little more than doubling the depth of it. It's not as if it swallows the neighbors up in that very loose bird's eye view analysis of form.
Motion or further discussion?
I got one thing to say. I'm fine with the addition with the issue of the window. While I'm sympathetic with the applicant, trying to make his bride to be very happy and make the room correct. And I feel like this is a visibility issue and an arrangement issue, and there are much smaller ways to fix that than moving a window and exchange and messing up the rhythm. So, if there were a larger hardship here, I would be more sympathetic to the idea of moving these windows. But since there's not, this can simply be solved with a set of blinds. So I think we should stick to the guidelines about the window. Yes, I make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, adopted as per staff recommendation. 1700 Dorothy Place.
Point of order. The recommendation for 1511 Dallas, as submitted in the guideline, or as submitted in our packet, was on consent, and I'm not sure that this, that we have before us a recommendation that places the condition except for the record that was presented today. I just wanted to make sure that we clarify that what's written in the recommendation and what's presented today, that those two things kind of jive, or that certainly our direction to the applicant is clear on the previous case.
The conditions that were part of the consent was that the existing window pattern be retained, that staff approve the roof color and the window and door selections prior to purchase and installation. And those were the two conditions.
Very good. That is clear. I didn't read specifically. I just wanted to make sure that all that was true. No, thanks.
Okay. 1700 Dorothy Place is an application for construction of a new two-story office building at this corner of Dorothy Place and 17th Avenue South. The new building will basically be facing Wedgwood Avenue here at the bottom of the screen, across from Dorothy Place and that vacant lot which is owned by the city. Parking for the building will be located in the basement level, accessed from the north side, the top of the screen here, through an additional parking area on the adjoining lot, which is owned by the same applicant. A 5-foot setback reduction is requested for Dorothy Place and a 10-foot setback determination from the alley side. Staff recommends the setback determination for several reasons, but primarily due to the unusual size and shape of the lot. Staff finds that the proposal meets the appropriate sections of the design guidelines, with the exception that we have requested the applicant to redesign the window openings on the 17th Avenue South and Dorothy Place sides to meet the guidelines for the rhythm and spacing of openings. In conclusion, staff recommends approval with the conditions that the windows on the 17th Avenue South and Dorothy Place sides be redesigned to meet the guidelines for openings, that staff have administrative review of materials, and that the utilities be located on the alley or along the property line beyond the midpoint of the building to minimize visibility. Yes, ma'am.
Hearing?
So Paul, all the elevations that we're seeing with the windows, you want to be totally redone? Is that what you're suggesting?
Not entirely redone. I mean, that's really more up to the architect himself or the client on that. But just to get those elevations, the more visible ones in particular, to better meet the guidelines for the proportion and rhythm of openings.
I'll jump in, specifically the ones on 17th Avenue South.
Say that again, Robin, please.
Specifically the windows that face 17th Avenue South.
Is that what we're currently looking at right now?
Yes.
That's correct.
Right here, this
The bottom image.
would face 17th.
That's right.
Is this about, excuse me, Is this about the rhythm of the windows or the size of the windows?
Both. Typically with historic buildings, you see windows are usually larger on the first level because the ceiling height was often higher. And then on the upper level, they were a little bit smaller or they were the same size. And in this case, you have a wide variety of sizes, stair stepping, smaller on one level, much smaller on the first level than the second level. And as Paul said, to correct me, the bottom level is the one facing Dorothy, and that's the greatest concern, and the top is facing 17th.
And this is complete new construction?
Yes.
All right, any other questions of staff?
Mr. Root, the architect, is here to discuss the proposal too.
Okay, all right. No other questions of staff? At this time, we'll open the public hearing. If you'll come forward, give us your name and address.
My name is John Root. I'm the architect for the project, 753 Alloway Street. I guess I should start by explaining the site. The site is rather challenging. It's a corner lot, but it's a triangular-shaped lot, and in addition to that, it's got a severe slope from the alley corner to 17th Avenue. So we're working under a pre-approved concept that was done by another architect, and has a lot of basis for a lot of our setback requests today. A lot of that's carried over from the previous approvals. So I think we've talked through a lot of that with staff, and I think we've gotten comfortable with them. But I wanted everybody to keep in mind that there's a significant grade difference between coming down Dorothy around onto 17th. And a lot of the architecture responds to that. In part, the previous submittal faced Dorothy, and we felt like because it's a corner lot, we wanted to produce a product that gave reverence to the corner, and we brought a front porch to the corner of the development. But it was kind of a compromise with us because as we come closer to 17th, the taller that porch becomes and the more massive it becomes, and the pedestrian scale kind of gets lost in translation. So could we go backwards to the renderings on the corner?
Clear for works too. You can go back to whichever one you want.
That 3D rendering, this is kind of a 3D rendering kind of project that it's hard to explain in two-dimensional elevations. Of course, being a commercial building, we had to consider ADA access, and so we incorporated our handicap ramp into the sidewalk system on Dorothy. And I think we've done a pretty good job of minimizing that impact to the pedestrian scale on 17th. And keep in mind, we're trying to conceal the parking under the building, so it's kind of, we're stealing inches here and capturing them there. So as you come around to 17th, the building rises out of the ground. So, and that in part, the architectural response responded by reducing the front portion of the building down in scale and bringing that ridge line down to, as it travels up the hill, the scale of the building goes with it. We've gone through a myriad of different obstacles or opportunities. Obviously, when you're trying to do contemporary architecture in a historic neighborhood, it's very challenging. And we've tried to come up with an interpretation that would best suit this site and best suit the time in which it's being built in 2015. That being said, to the issue of the windows, our exterior design was very much focused on a rhythm and a spacing and presentation to the street and sidewalk. So on first glance of the 17th Avenue elevation, you see a big blank wall on the left side of the big window unit. But when you look at it in do we have that rendering? One more on 14th? No. Well, when you look at it with the building as you're coming down the sidewalk, there's a rhythm that's established by the existing architecture of the house next door. And because the building itself is kind of, in the architecture, we squared it up to the front setback of 17th and kept the rhythm of the building, of the massing coming down Music Row. We've kept that massing. You do see a window unit that's just off the corner there, that's our stairwell, that's our kind of our main lobby, that establishes that rhythm. It's a very vertical rhythm. It's a kind of a two-story rhythm. And as that comes around the building, you see our main window units in the front. And then when you come up Dorothy, you pick up that rhythm again, not only in windows, but also in the sunshades that we've designed into the architecture, because this is going to be southwestern facing. So we were very concerned about the brutal southwestern sun in the afternoon and the heat load that would produce. But another one of the ways we established that rhythm was the change in materials on Dorothy. This is a medical use. There's going to be patient rooms on that first floor. So we were trying to figure out a way to compromise with the expanse of large windows that are just going to have mini blinds in them, versus something we could do in the architecture that it starts to speak of that fenestration of those windows that we historically see in homes. And so that's what we did. We introduced a wood where we're removing the brick from the building and adding a wood element to establish that rhythm. And that rhythm follows up into the dormer upstairs, where we can allow a little larger window and a little more light into the spaces up there, because they're more office use and they're not really patient driven. So upon one change we did do upon the staff's recommendation, we added a lower window to all the windows on the first floor. I think that you can see that there. And I've kind of studied the plan with the client, and we have no problem adding another one of the pairs of windows one more on the corner there, kind of next to our logo there. We have no problem adding that into the plan. We can work that in. So if that's an area we can add windows, we can add windows there. But we felt like we were trying to compromise between kind of the use of the building and a modern interpretation of the rhythm of historic windows, knowing that it's a modern building, knowing that we were trying to come up with a compromise for everyone. I guess that being said, we have no problem we've worked with staff a lot. We can continue to do so if this board feels, but we would like to maintain the window unit on 17th. Obviously, it's a very architectural, big statement of the building and of the architecture and of the modernity of the building itself, when it's being built. So I'll be more than happy to answer questions for you.
You all have any questions that you'd like to ask? John?
John, if I recall on this project, I vaguely recall it previously coming before us. Is Dorothy, there's kind of an empty lot in front of Dorothy between that and major thoroughfare? Is that Wedgwood or?
Yes, there's a green space across the way.
Is that part of the right of way? Is that parcel lot? In other words, can anything be built in that space?
It is owned by the Metro Nashville.
Okay, so one part of that argument might be that you have frontage there, not only at Dorothy but at Wedgwood. That's an accurate statement, I guess, in terms of the site plan.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And of course, across that green space is Belmont.
Okay. Any other questions for John?
Yes, I'd like to, sorry. Here it is. Thank you. I'd like to ask you, on around, well, this isn't the picture. This sort of, the picture that we have there faces 17th, doesn't it? Now we're facing Wedgwood here.
This is Dorothy and Wedgwood, yes.
Right. So then if you go on around Dorothy, is there not a white brick structure on around from there that's kind of more modern? It's like a duplex or triplex.
Right behind this one, you have an alley, and then if you keep moving down Dorothy, you have I think the one you're talking about, which is
where you go into 16th.
Right, where it's a 1970s,
It's a
1980s
1970s
two-story,
thing.
yeah, and that's on the other side of that alley from this one.
I thought it was in the curve.
That top picture vaguely shows it, kind of in the center of the picture in the back across the alley.
Yes, I see it. Yeah. I thought it was actually more side there.
Right.
But it's more towards 16th, isn't it?
Right. It's on the front setback of 16th, so it's got a parking lot, I think, between us and them.
Okay. So most of this, though, faces Wedgwood, as Ben was saying.
Yes, yes.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I will close the public hearing and open for discussion by the commission.
It's like you're talking about that building out there.
Yes.
Clarification from
Goes on more around.
Sean, Paul. The house is next door on 17th. Is that a contributing structure?
It is, yes.
Y'all thinking?
So what is this? Could you be more specific about what you guys are recommending?
A redesign of the windows on 17th and Dorothy, review of materials, and of course the location of utilities. We didn't attempt to try to redesign the windows, just requested that they be more in keeping with the proportion and dimensions of historic windows like the design guidelines require.
And Richard,
More like the ones on 17th.
More like that rhythm and that proportion and
well, and I think earlier you had mentioned, Paul had mentioned that the windows on the bottom are typically larger than the ones on the top. So that's where.
we're the same.
But those are guidelines, and you can interpret as you wish.
Well, you have discretion based on the circumstances to do that. It's just, the problem here is that it's just so totally different, it's hard to understand what to do, really. It varies so much from the house that's outlined in, well, that's gray in the picture that faces 17th. I remember when this came up, and I thought that he was going to do that house, but it looks like a whole new structure has been planned to face Wedgwood. So it makes it difficult to understand how to even grapple with this one, in my view.
Yeah, what I'm struggling with is the fact that this is a new construction. It's not a remodel. I think it's very well done. So, you know, where do those guidelines stop on a new construction in a place like this that faces Wedgwood, which is a very large thoroughfare? So.
And it's well to remember, there's on Wedgwood, on down from 16th and 17th toward 21st, there are multi-unit modern homes, condos.
And actually, on the corner across, I can't remember what it's called, but it's right there on Magnolia and Wedgwood. It's an infill as well, and it is, not architecturally. I mean, not historical, non-historical. So it's about catty corner from Dorothy and 17th.
Go ahead, Ben.
I think it is a very challenging site in that you've got a transition of, certainly the appearance of a transition of use, although in this part of the district, many of the historic homes are commercial in use, they maintain an appearance of when they were built with the entrances and the proportion and rhythm of openings and all those things. The use has changed, but its character as a residential neighborhood, or certainly those that hadn't been torn down and replaced with other things, its character retains. And while it doesn't proper front Wedgwood, and it's not across the street from a university campus that has a whole different scale to it, it certainly approaches that line because it is the thing that's directly across the street from that, and a different style of architecture would be appropriate because of that relationship, I think. And so, to the architect's credit, it's a difficult problem. It's a difficult thing, I think, to try to do something that isn't shoehorning a commercial use into a residential structure. That's becoming more and more difficult. and I think challenges many of these houses to try to, I think I saw a quote in the Business Journal, and people are on Music Row are tired of having their office in a bedroom, and so this is I think case in point of what that challenge is. The guideline reads that the relationship with the height of windows and doors and the rhythm of solid walls and voids and window openings in a new building shall be compatible by not contrasting greatly. And I think that's where, I mean, obviously the staff is struggling with, particularly on 17th, where you have this change in use and such a, you've essentially got an assembly of windows that is one tall, narrow piece on a tall, narrow facade, because the lot slims down there, and I think I feel like in looking at it, it certainly distinguishes itself as not old or imitating old, but certainly as new, and I think in our task is to try to is to determine whether that envelope has been pushed beyond something that is appropriate. I know we don't necessarily consider use, but a new commercial building and a new residential building are maybe not one and the same. And I think we have in the past given some consideration to use and what it looks like should fit in, but not necessarily copy what a residential structure should be. In looking at the total picture, both 17th and Dorothy together, there are so many dissimilarities between, there's a consistent language, but there's several dissimilarities that it's in looking at it, it's hard to resolve the differences and create a consistent rhythm across there. I mean, there's a fine line between that. I think you read the vertical where the implication of a change in materials from brick to wood and the eyebrows and the window patterning is an effective device to set up a rhythm, and then you've got the window proportions within that each one of those is different. I think makes it harder to resolve is this right for this particular use and for this particular site. And I think some more consistency there in my view of this might help it to be viewed in total as compared to a two-story house in its total thing. Not that they're one and the same, or that the exact window proportion on the house next door as a residential use needs to be the exact proportion of the new window. But I can sympathize with the staff trying to resolve, does this fit? And our task is to try to figure out the same.
Well, I agree with that, Ben, because it's a different structure from what exists on 17th in the main. There are some different things on different buildings on 17th. You've got that great big whatever, I can't remember the name of it, but it's some kind of an institution on 17th. What persuades me to be in favor of this is that it is facing Wedgwood. Right across the street is the big Belmont College, University, and then down Wedgwood, you've got these modern things going in, modern condos going in there with very different lines and proportions from the historic homes that are down 16th and 17th. And also in the inner part of close to Vanderbilt there. The old teachers' school is what I'm talking about, where that's located. You've got a lot of historic homes in that area, but they're inside, not on Wedgwood. So you got a lot of differences going on there, so I think I would approve it, but I don't know what about the windows. You guys got to tell me about the windows. They look kind of odd to me.
I agree with you, Ms. Cantrell. I think I agree with Ben. He's too smart for me. I can't keep up. But I think this site and this project has landed on the fringe. Mm-hmm. It's in a gray area. And looking at it, I don't mind the windows, and I just want to be sure that you all know why, that although they've tried to and done a good job of trying to fit in the historical character. I'm not a fan of someone trying to take something new and not historic and act like it is, because it's not. I think the architect has done well here, and I'm inclined to approve this project.
I'm close to where you are, Sam. I think, if anything, I'm troubled with the most are the sun screens, and I think it accentuates the difference of what's going on. I don't mind there being differences if it's a little bit more subtle, because it is in a historic zone, and I've never really seen eyebrows before in any historic building. And I don't mind pushing the envelope on modern interpretation of an historic zone guidelines whatsoever. I just think there's so much going on. It's just, I wish some of it would kind of filter away. And I think I kind of keep going back, possibly it's the eyebrows. It's just a little too much. If I could just get if it was a little bit more subtle, then I think I would be okay with it.
Talk about the white thing?
Yeah.
I agree with you as well. If that could be diminished a bit.
To that point, I think the heaviness of the large, and the staff brought this up, the heaviness of a larger opening over the smaller openings downtown, downstairs, I think is something distinctly, I don't know that it doesn't sound like we're in agreement or have had a lot of discussion about the 17 side as much as the Dorothy side, in that the combination of the eyebrow and the varying sizes of those windows, in addition, all of that become too great that it doesn't, that pattern, everything breaks the pattern. There's something there behind, because you've got the change in materials, but everything breaks the pattern that it visually perhaps doesn't seem to fit. And if some of that were less different in terms of this rhythm of three different openings, that more of that language were the same. I'm asking a question, not making a statement or trying to design this for them. Would that lessen, the degree to which it feels either top heavy, or that proportion rhythm of openings is different or contrasts greatly?
I think we're saying the same thing, but what I don't think objectionable is if you have a bigger window that's true glazing on top of something that's equal size, but it's less glaze and another material, but it reads the same, like the brown in the glass. It's like you see where I'm coming from? It's like a different interpretation of that.
It appears while they aren't columns, it appears that you've got this kind of pilaster language that occurs between the openings, and that sets up a rhythm. But the other pieces make that harder to read and make it much more different and contrasting greatly. Might be a way you'd approach this, or an argument you can have.
Just one layer or a layer and a half you kind of want shed, so we can.
So if I'm reading this image correctly, the windows come out from the facade.
I think,
and
actually, I think that's just the eyebrow that gives that impression. The architect can speak to that, but I believe they're flush.
No, they are actually partially bay windows.
Okay.
At a triangular, they're a triangular bay, and part of that eyebrow is acting as a sunshade to the western.
Okay. Well, I'll just reiterate again my opinion, then I'll be quiet. This is a new construction on the fringe of the historic district or overlay, and there's a practical boundary of where these things begin and end. It's not just a political boundary, just like two state lines. It's not like you go from one country and you have a different landscape after you go into Georgia. I'm of the opinion that new architecture should be the architecture of its time and not try to act like something that it's not. And that's where I stand, and that's all I have to say.
As you all craft a motion, we need to make sure that we identify why we're deviating from some of the guidelines and the interpretations and how it fits into this to be very, very clear so that we're not setting a precedent for something that's being developed all along. So give that thought as we craft our motion.
Well, I'm sorry, I said I'd shut up. My reasoning is the simple fact that it's new construction, and it's on an edge. It's on a fringe condition, and that's that.
Are you prepared to make a motion?
Can I just, and I understand and hear this because it is a very nice design. There is no question about that. I think from recommendation, let's just go simplify on that, is that the staff is saying windows. They're not saying the whole structure. They're saying windows. So architects are very smart and resourceful, and possibly there could be another way to diminish the eyebrow or that. I mean, this is, it's not an absolute that this is what they can, the only thing they can come up with. So granted, you're right. It should, if this is on the fringe and architecturally it is, there's a mixture in that area, I agree with that. But again, going back to what the staff is saying is that they agree with the structure. It's just the windows that they're looking at.
So, to that point, and to break it down specifically, in reading the guidelines and specifically height to width ratio of the window opening on 17th and the width of that facade, it's a 20-foot wide facade. And in viewed in three dimensions, you've kind of got a window pattern, not kind of, you have a window pattern on the east side where there's that is in keeping. The first window's on the east side, which if you're standing kind of on the sidewalk at the front porch of the adjacent historic contributing house, you kind of see a small to a tall. I'm looking at drawing 2. You get a small window up top, large window on the bottom, so that sets up a relationship which is pretty typical for exactly what we're talking about in a historic building. And you come around, you've got a narrow facade, and I find the height and width of that opening relative, although it's a very modern appearance, the height and width and proportion of that opening to that width of facade, a 2-story facade, I find that appropriate to a commercial building, which this is. And there's a transition from at the edge of the district, all those things we've said. I don't find a problem with that. I will say again with the eyebrow and kind of the little stair step of the window there, you're adding elements that make it less clear. I'd like my personal preference with if that were squared off, I would feel even more strongly about this point, but that some of the little quirks of things that make it each of the individual pieces more distinct are taking away from the whole, but I could live with that one. Moving around to the other side, I think I'll reiterate that the differences, I get the concept and it all makes sense to me, but the differences are reinforcing the differences in window sizes and the differences in the sizes of the eyebrow make the language confused, and it's hard to set up that rhythm and be okay with the more subtle moves of the change in material. You've got a triangulated pop out. It makes the top much heavier than the bottom, and I think that's, if I hear the staff, that's specifically what is concerning on this building to that. And if that could read more consistently, I think the rhythm would be more clear, and it would fit into the guidelines by not contrasting too greatly. Contrast is okay, but too.
So are you saying that these 3 bump out windows with the eyebrows, if they were the same across the facade?
I think that starts to move in the direction of I don't, as a device, having the material change below that so that it reads as a 2-story volume with punched openings in between it, that's convincing to me.
Okay.
That may not be to others on the commission, but that's a convincing way to be able to have more glazing on the second floor than the first. And that has less to do with the actual size of the windows and just more to do with the total picture of the facade and the elevation.
I concur.
That all those things are different really starts to confuse that and make it less clear and less convincing as a move architecturally.
I think those are good points. Not contrasting greatly is what we're trying to achieve here. So, and I think what you've just suggested, Ben, would do that.
Yeah, I mean, the staff made a clear point to not to try to design this project for the architect, and if we haven't stepped clearly, if I haven't stepped clearly over that line, we're awfully close to it, and I think but also too, I don't want to send the applicant away and the applicant's architect away with now what the heck do I do? Mm-hmm. To try to draw into clear focus some of the things that are successful or that would cause this to move towards not contrasting too greatly. I don't think we're far off. I can, the details of that, I certainly can see the staff's objection, and I think that all those things are at each opening different, again, muddies the water and makes it less clear.
I agree. I'll make a motion to approve this based on staff recommendations. And I just maybe to say for the record, I think we're probably a little bit more lenient on what that description may be than possibly the staff, but I think you kind of catch where we're coming from. So maybe just a little tweaking, and I think Ben summed it up very well.
Are you making a motion?
Yes. I'm sorry. I thought I did that.
Well, you did, but we need a little bit more direction and clarification. Okay. So I know we've had enough discussion about it, but we need to actually put it into the motion.
Can we do a timeout in the middle of a motion so I can talk to Robin?
Well, we have a motion, but it hadn't been seconded.
Okay. Robin, can you give us staff recommendations real quick?
I think you need a second to continue discussion.
And I will second that.
Okay. All right. Can we have them
I'm
now?
sorry, what was the question?
Can you give us your opposing recommendations to this project? I know the windows are what I've been talking about the whole time. Anything else major that we need to clarify?
Other than what's set forth in here.
No, again, in a more traditional building, it's easy to say, oh, the window should be 2 feet taller or whatever. But on this one, it's such a unique, great design. We didn't want to try to redesign windows for them. But our recommendation was to ask him to look at it again and come up with another solution that better fits that design guideline for rhythm of opening. Okay. But we didn't want to try to do that.
That's clear enough for me. Thank you.
And do we need to give more of that direction in the motion? I mean, you've been listening to our discussion, but...
Mm-hmm. Normally, I would certainly ask for that, but I think the discussion is clear, and yes, the architect feels comfortable coming up with
You're comfortable
another
with that
solution.
Motion? Okay.
And, we can always bring it back to you if there's any concern.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion with discussion passes. All right. 2312 White Avenue.
2312 White Avenue is an application for an addition and a setback determination. The house is located on the corner of White Avenue and Cathy Avenue in the Woodland and Waverly Preservation Overlay. And just a reminder that in a preservation overlay like this one, all exterior changes to the historic house are stringently reviewed, as are site features like uncovered decks, parking areas, and fencing. On corner lots, base zoning requires that primary structures be a minimum of 10 feet from the side street property line. In this case, the existing historic structure is located about 5 feet 11 inches from the side street property line. The addition is inset appropriately and will not be any wider than the historic structure, but yet it doesn't meet that 10-foot base zoning setback. Staff recommends approval of the proposed setback determination since the addition will be matching the line of the historic house. Staff also notes that the site plan that you see up there shows the outline of an outbuilding, but no outbuilding is proposed as part of this proposal that might come forward later, but right now, there's no outbuilding in front of you. Here's the floor plan of the addition, showing how it steps in appropriately. The historic house has a multi-part roof form that is typical of Nashville houses of this era, but which can be hard to connect to with an addition. The applicant's proposed method of tying into the roof involves eliminating two of the historic house's ridges on the north elevation. The new roof form raises the height of the back gable's ridge and eliminates most of the distance between the taller central hip form and the lower back hipped roof. With this proposal, this portion of the historic roof form would be permanently and irreversibly altered. The design guidelines for the Woodland and Waverly District specifically state that, quote, original roof pitch and configuration should be maintained, unquote. Staff therefore finds that the proposed alteration to the roof form does not meet the design guidelines. Staff asks that the condition of approval be that the addition's roof tie into the existing roof in a manner that preserves the historic roof form. Here's the second floor plan. Staff notes that the area of the connector is, it's outlined there with the red box. That's a stairwell, so kind of where they're connecting that roof form that we have concerns about is a stairwell. Here's the left elevation showing the tie-in. Here, again, is the left elevation. The applicant is proposing to alter an existing historic window opening. As this is a historic preservation overlay, the design guidelines specifically state that, quote, the original the original size and shape of windows should be maintained. Staff therefore finds that altering this window opening does not meet the design guidelines. Again, on the left elevation, staff asks that this dormer that you can see with the red box around it be inset 2 feet from the wall below. Here's the right elevation. Staff is not requesting any changes to this elevation. And here are the front and rear elevations. Again, the dormer on the left is highlighted because staff is asking that it be inset 2 feet from the wall below. The rear elevation shows a future deck, and staff asks that any deck not extend further beyond the side wall of the historic house, as this one is shown to do. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the project with the following conditions. All existing window openings, including the window on the back of the north/left facade, remain as is. The addition's roof tie into the existing roof in a manner that preserves the historic roof form. The applicants seek permission from MHDC staff to make any alterations to the exterior of the historic house that are not noted on the plan. This includes, but is not limited to, window replacement, re-roofing, and siding replacement in whole or part. 4, any deck not extend any wider than the historic house's sidewalls, and staff approve the final design and material choices for the deck. 5, the dormer on the north elevation be set back 2 feet from the wall below. 6, staff approve window and door specifications, roof color, and a masonry sample. 7, the HVAC be located on a side facade behind the midpoint of the house or on a rear facade. And finally, 8, staff approve any permanent landscape features included but not limited to fencing, parking pads, and walkways. Just want to note that we do have a letter of support from the next door neighbor at 2312 White Avenue that should be before you. I put copies in front of your chairs. So I believe the architect is here to address the commission and answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the staff before we open the public hearing?
I have one real quick. The last portion of your presentation there about all the material choices, that's all still under the guise of your staff as this moves forward?
Right, yeah. I mean, typically that's part of most of our conditions, just that, things often change when people begin to price things out, so.
But nothing's left floating in the wind?
Yes.
It's still they're going to work with you, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, hopefully, yes.
All right. Seeing no questions, we'll open the public hearing. If you'll come forward, give us your name and address, please.
Josh Spence, 700 Mill Park. As Melissa mentioned, I'm the architect. We've worked very closely with Historic on this, back and forth a lot. There are really only 2 of the conditions that we have concerns about. The roof form, as she mentioned, is very difficult to tie into. And our interpretation of the guidelines were that we were to maintain the slope and the look. And so in doing that, we did match the pitches. I have something that I'd like to hand out and pass around, which kind of highlights the challenge that we have when those two roof forms connect. You basically create a pond on top of that roof. The connector that we're proposing would be set below the ridge height of the original house, and it would match the pitch of the roof. So it would be almost an extension of the existing. To be a little bit clear, it actually isn't where the stair falls. It's literally just a connector to allow construction to maintain a watertight roof condition. After some feedback with Melissa, we actually moved the stair to the other side of the house and were able to fit into the new roof form. So we achieved that. But there's really, the space under which it falls under this is actually just attic space. This is purely a move to try to build a watertight structure is really what it is. So we're open to suggestions, but that's one condition that we're not exactly sure how to address. Just out of pure construction. We feel like we've matched the pitches. We feel like we've kept the ridge of that connector below the previous ridge, and so therefore we feel like we have a solution that would work. The other condition that we would like to argue against is on this view here, which is faces an existing property next door. The window that's dashed in would represents the existing window. I have another image of the interior condition, the existing condition that I'd like to pass around. This is currently the kitchen. The homeowners want to maintain that as the kitchen, but expand it a little bit. And we would like to, with this renovation, resolve the issue that you see in the photo. Basically, kitchen cabinets come across the front of that window. We felt like the original design, as seen in this elevation, shows two. I think what we would like to propose is going to a single window in the exact same location, have the exact same proportions, just raising the seal height to be at countertop level. And that's really the only thing that we would like to do. And that's only to create a cleaner detail inside. We felt like it was far enough back on the elevation. The house next door sits really tight to it. There are a lot of trees. It can be seen in that photograph there at the top. But we would keep, like I said, we'd keep the same head height, keep the same width of the window. We would just raise the sill height to a countertop level. So those would be the only two comments or recommendations that we would have issue with. So.
The two diagrams that you sent around on the roof, are those attempts to correct, or are those what were originally?
That's basically what I've done is I've taken the form that's shown in the application and I've removed it and then highlighted it just to show you that without it there's a real construction problem.
Staff have seen these?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They have. Okay. All right. Okay. Questions of the architect?
On the window in the kitchen, have you looked at just putting like a transom panel below, and that just doesn't work? It's just a bad detail.
I think that will be our fallback for sure, and we may even have to break our cabinets at that point. But ideally, we would make it work in the way we were proposing, I guess.
So, Robin, for the staff, as long as they maintain that cased opening, is that okay? Can they do whatever they want to inside that cased opening?
Yes, and that's what some have done, is just even wallboard over the entire window on the inside, depending on what they want to do, or just over half of it in the case of kitchens. But then from the outside, it still looks exactly the same trim and the same proportions.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hi, my name is John Root. I'm at 753 Alloway Street. I felt compelled to speak to this house because I'm a former Woodland and Waverly neighborhood president for 3 years. I lived in the neighborhood for 13 years. I'm very familiar with this site, very familiar with everything around it. I wanted to point out to the commission that I've done several projects in Woodland and Waverly, and over the years I've been allowed to do not ridge raises, but I've been allowed to meet the top ridge. And two that are kind of good examples of that is 2009 White Avenue. It's on the corner, one block down to the north. And what we did there is carry the main ridgeline back. We did that because of this situation that we're getting into a lot as architects, is we're trying to make these roofs work with these older homes. And a lot of times you run into more problems when you try to lower that ridge. And in essence, you're being detrimental in the addition to the historic home than you would be simplifying the roof forms, focusing on materiality change, focusing on the new addition versus the old addition, rather than try to clean the roof, fix old additions to the house. And I just wanted to point out that 2009 White Avenue was a perfect example of that situation where we carried the main ridgeline back and we treated that addition as a new front elevation because it was on a corner elevation. And so that's a huge example, precedent. I was also allowed to do it on my personal home at 2104 Grantland, to where you can't really see it from the sidewalk. So it wasn't a detriment to that home either. And I think everybody that's seen that home didn't realize that we had carried the ridge back, to be honest with you. So at the same time, I would really like to see this house have more of a presence on the side street. I think because of the weirdness of the roof, it's kind of been neglected a little bit. So I think if this applicant was allowed to carry the ridge line back, he could do a lot more with the design of the home. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Thank you. I'll close the public hearing and open it for discussion.
Actually, I'm more concerned with the window than I am the roof line. I think that that's problem is solvable through the design of the interior of the kitchen, and it's not worth taking a historic window off the facade. I will also say, as far as the roof goes, as long as if it just makes construction sense to build a better addition by extending the ridge line, then it just does. That's what I think.
I have a question for staff, and make sure I'm reading this correctly. The south elevation is Carley Street? Kathy? Sorry. It's very small print. And so that one, the architect has certainly, and that's right at the street. I mean, that one is visible from the car, from the sidewalk, from across the street, neighbor's house, all over. And I think I can certainly see both in plan and in three-dimensional studies the challenge they faced in these cross-facing or hipped gables on both sides. That's very much a challenge. Would it be accurate to say that the south is certainly more important than the north? Not that the north isn't important, but the south is certainly more important. And it looks especially from the information that supplemental information that was provided, that this problem really is exacerbated and is quite the challenge on the north, more on the north side than it is on the south. If the addition were, and I don't know this, I hadn't studied the plan enough, but if the addition and were it to meet the ridge was an overbuild, technically, or maybe speaking from a preservation standpoint, you could take that off, or that portion of it off, and still preserve the form of the existing form of the roof. That would qualify, even though the roof might be in the same plane, or you would reshingle that entire piece of the house. Is that accurate?
I believe so. I mean, going back to what your first question, yes, the south elevation, which you see here, is highly visible, and I would say we would look at that more stringently than we would the other one. I mean, it's a historic preservation overlay, so we're looking at it automatically more stringently than we do in other districts.
Agreed.
Yes, I believe so with the roof. I mean, it probably could be done in a way that if you were to remove it, the original roof form could still be discerned or reformed or.
Yeah, I don't know I certainly know in the little connector piece, or it appears in the connector piece, I don't know how much of that is an overbuild to the existing roof, or how much they're kind of dissecting the original roof out of the back of it, and maybe the applicant can speak to that. But I just wanted to clarify to see if that might help their situation and not, they're only 6 inches above the roof, a pretty good little ways back. I don't know what the solution is there, but maybe there are some other options for them. I just want to clarify that. Thanks.
Other comments? Anyone prepared to make a motion?
I wish I was smart enough to follow Ben's dialogue there. But I think what I'm hearing is we're seemingly okay with staff recommendation on the window and probably can live with the roof.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve 2312 White Avenue based on staff recommendations, except the requirement of maintaining the existing roof, and that to accept as the roof change per drawn. Unless Ben has a follow-up.
No, I'll second with the note that the applicant's or the architect's clarification that piece is an overbuild, and that were it removed, the original form, I think, would still certainly be present.
Okay.
and discernible.
All right. Is everyone clear on the motion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that correct, Ben? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as amended.
– 1714 Fourth Avenue North is an application for a new single-family infill and an outbuilding. At the February meeting, the commission approved the demolition of the historic structure on the lot based on economic hardship. Staff is recommending approval of the project with standard conditions, all of which the applicant agrees to. Unless the commission has specific questions or concerns, I won't do a full presentation of the project. The architect is here, but I think we have all the conditions worked out at this point. Okay.
Any questions of staff? Otherwise, I'll open the public hearing. Preston, you want to address this?
I'm Preston Quirk, architect for the project, and as Melissa said, we're in agreement with conditions and just request approval, and I'll answer any questions if there are any. So, thank you.
Thanks for working with the staff.
Sure.
All right. Anyone else that would like to address the commission? Otherwise, I'll close the public hearing and open for discussion. Or a motion.
If the staff is happy, I move to approve per staff recommendations.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. 1709 Beechwood.
(1709) Beechwood Avenue. This is an application to construct an addition to a historic house. The existing house is 1.5 stories tall, and the addition will be 2 stories tall with a partial third story in the basement gained as the grade drops away towards the back. The addition will tie into the rear of the house 12 feet behind the existing roof ridge and rise to be 13 inches taller than the house at the rear. This taller portion here, highlighted, will be behind the historic structure, beginning roughly 40 feet back from the front of the house. The addition will be distinguished from the historic house by setting in the walls of the addition from those of the house at the rear corners. And then going further back, the walls will step out to match the width of the historic house. And then a deck and screened porch, covered porch, will step out an additional 5 feet to the right. The guidelines make several allowances for additions to be wider or taller than a historic house under a number of circumstances, but it's generally not appropriate for an addition to be both taller and wider, as this would be. We, in your recommendation, saw we did have a condition regarding alteration of original window pattern on that right elevation. The applicants agreed to that condition. Going further, the addition, staff found it does meet the guidelines for materials. Our conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed addition with the conditions that the addition shall not be both taller and wider than the historic house, and that the window pattern on the right side not be altered, which the applicant has agreed. Meeting those conditions, staff finds the project would then meet the design guidelines for the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay.
So, Sean, you and the applicant, or your staff and the applicants, you're all on the same page with these conditions?
No, actually, they want to talk to you about the first condition on it being taller and wider. The applicants are here if you'd like to ask them about that.
Sean, the first case we saw had that higher addition that was 40 feet back. Is that the same thing here?
That addition, yes, similar. That one was actually taller, or more taller, that can't be right, than the historic house than this one. But that one did not go wider than the historic house. This one is taller and wider.
I understand the taller and wider, but I mean, it's the taller part is 40 feet away from the front of the house. I mean, that's kind of like this, that's the guideline, right?
That's the guideline.
Okay.
That's the guideline that this commission developed.
And this is 40 feet away from the front of the house.
Yeah, yes. I can measure that.
As far as the side porch goes, what's on that facade? What's on that side of the property? Is it another home, or is it a street?
There's another house, very similar.
Does it infringe on any kind of setback?
No, it goes right to the setback, the 5-foot setback.
Okay.
But it does not encroach.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Otherwise, I will open the public hearing. And we obviously have people that would like to speak. If you will give us your name and your address, please.
Yes, please. Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Lamarinel. I'm with Allard Ward Architects at 1618 16th Avenue South. We have been working with this client on Beechwood for several months and had some discussion with the staff also about this addition. And I think ultimately our goal was to give the client some more space for their family that's kind of growing, and with that to create some space on the second story. Let me see. Second story that is full height, that's usable space for them. And we did realize that we wanted to keep the roof plane as low as we could. We want to kind of protect the silhouette of the existing house. I think that's probably what's most important to all of us. I would point out the orange bar there doesn't quite stretch as far as staff has kind of shown it. There's an angled line there. That's where the roof actually starts. So we're in fact starting our ridge about 46 feet from the front of the house before it jumps up that 13 inches. And we're not even sure it's even 13 inches. We think it's probably less, but with our capabilities of measuring the existing ridge, we did the best we could, and we kind of shot it very conservative so that we wouldn't be any more than 13 inches. But it is 13 inches taller, and we did make some concessions on the side roof line, you'll see we have a 7-foot bearing plate in a good portion of the upstairs too, just trying to keep that roof tucked in behind the existing structure. I'd also like to point out the screen porch there. You'll see the dashed lines on the first floor. The screen porch is actually set down below the first floor level about 4 steps, so approximately 28 inches, in order to get that mass even lower. And it is transparent. It's a screen porch, so you will be able to see all the way through it, even though it is a side addition. So we felt like a higher roof that is indiscernible from any angle on any side of the house from any distance seemed like that would satisfy the guidelines. And then the side addition along with that is transparent and it doesn't encroach on the appropriate setbacks, which would be the 5 feet. So we felt like instead of putting a flat roof on top of this second story mass, and the existing house you'll see has already had an addition on it that sort of almost had a flat roof, we thought it would be a more appropriate kind of historic addition. It would look more historic if we used pitched roofs instead of that flat kind of salt boxed roof, and really tried to emulate the historic nature of the house. And so we are asking for that 13 inches, probably less, and that transparent 5-foot bump out the side for the screen porch only. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Real quick, is there an indention between
there
the
is.
original house and the addition?
If you look here, the first floor plan is on the right-hand side of the screen there.
Okay, I see it.
The right-hand side is a 2-foot inset, 4 feet deep, because it's 2-story tall on that side. The opposite side, we kept 1 story, so it has a 1-foot indention by 4 feet long.
Right on. Thank you.
Sure.
Right. Are there any questions of the architect?
I think there was, or at least I feel like there's was I not paying attention to the discussion about the changing of the windows on the right? I believe that's the...
Yes, if you see the triple window there, the client had originally wanted to request that, and then we got with staff and they said, it's probably not very likely, and which we had told the client not very likely, and so we rescinded that. The upper story window has a triple kind of non-conforming, really recent addition of 3 kind of long windows, and we wanted to change those back to something that was more historic, and that we also need them for egress for that bedroom, so we were trying to make amends there.
And so the application, for clarity, the triple window is not existing. The double window is a previous addition, and this is kind of a correction with an egress issue.
Yes, sir.
Is the application for maintaining the 3 windows, or what is the existing window proportion?
The existing window has a single, which you can see in the floor plan there on the right-hand side. It just has a single double hung that is sized just like the 3 shown there. In the upper window, you'll see the dashed line. There are 3 kind of outswing awnings above a bed in there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And certainly those 3 above a bed is a I don't even want to say non-conforming.
I think
That's a hazard.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Anyone else in the audience would like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Open for discussion.
Well, let's talk about the porch. I do too. I think that the applicant and staff are on the same page with the windows. I have no issue with the roof height. In the past, when additions have been put on the rear, we've required them to step in so that the addition is not so visible. Is that not correct? Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Maybe, and also definitely distinguishable from the historic portion.
Right. So Now, the applicant has accomplished that, and now we have this appendage on the back right side. So that brings the visibility back. So somebody tell me how they feel about that, please.
Well, if you look,
I put the conversation on the table.
if you look at a picture on the neighbor and they have a back deck, it is not like that. Meaning it's the same width as the house.
It's literally on the rear.
It is.
And it is on the rear, I've seen it.
You can see the picture. So,
Maybe this is probably a better question for the applicant. Is there some kind of hardship that made that deck be located and designed exactly where it is and how it is?
Sean, do we have the rear elevation of the house too, or do we just bring the side?
Just the side.
We had one of these approved on consent last month, and I think we had one the month before. We've been putting porches expanding to the side on projects, on several projects lately, and staff has been very accommodating because they were transparent. Basically, to come forth today was not to talk about whether we could have the porch, because y'all were cool with the porch. The question was we couldn't have 13 inches of extra height, so we could have 8-foot ceilings in a master bedroom and have a porch. We will squeeze the master bedroom down if you're going to take rid of our porch, because if you look at the rear elevation of the house, our goal as designers is to not let this porch eclipse the back of this addition. We built a really great family room and family dining space. This client actually wanted a very small porch. This porch is probably about 120 square feet. It's a tiny little tree house of a porch. Everyone agreed placing it on the back, covering up windows, blocking light and view would be a detriment to the design. So given the option, the porch is a much more important element to this client and something staff was totally in line with. The question was more about the 13-inch roof line, which seems sort of immaterial to everything else, and that's when we showed up today.
So it sounds to me like the porch isn't a problem, nor the roof is a problem, but having both of them is just asking for too much sugar for a dime, right?
Right.
According to staff, it's a problem, right?
well, let's have a little conversation about that. So the porch. So we have had projects, and maybe the staff wasn't tuned into that particular issue because it's to the very back part of that lot. So if because of the grade, you probably won't see that from the street. It's not visible on the facade side. That could be why it's not a focus. We're looking at it from a plan. I'm not as articulate as our architect, but the fact that we're seeing it on flat floor plan, that if you had to see it in a 3D, it probably wouldn't be so prominent.
I certainly understand the architect's reasoning behind, for the porch. I would do the same thing if it was a project on my table. I don't understand why we're making a fuss over a small roof raise and a porch at the same time. They both seem very practical to me, and I think we should probably approach this in a pretty practical manner.
I agree with that, Sam. To me, looking at this design, I think it's a pretty good design, and I don't think the porch greatly varies with the guideline or the houses of this house and the houses around. I think it's overall a good design. I can understand why they want the porch. I sure would want one. And I don't think it sticks out there that far, and it doesn't encroach on the neighboring property. And he's not here to say it bothers him. So I'm assuming that it doesn't. So for those reasons, I think that I would approve the design as it is presently presented.
Other comments?
I'm behind, sorry. I disagree with what you said earlier, by the way. Monet, the first part. The part about me being smarter or whatever you said. Anyways, I digress. Is there a articulate? Yeah, thanks for clarifying. That's not true either. Is there a front elevation? Did I miss that in the documents?
Certainly in your, the mailed presentations, I don't have it on the PowerPoint.
A drawing.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's not in the packet either.
And, I mean, perhaps because it's a rear addition, there wasn't one necessary, but I was trying to resolve the comments about it being minimally or not visible, just from in drawing form. But you've answered the question. I think no, it's certainly not in our packet.
Robin, can you just clarify why you found both objectionable?
In the past, you've asked us not to allow for or to recommend additions that are both taller and wider. So that was our recommendation to you.
Was that not more of a point to the entire structure and not something like a porch?
It really wasn't specified in talking about making sure that additions are an appropriate massing and don't overwhelm the home. It was, just that general. They really shouldn't, majority of the time, really shouldn't be both wider and taller. So that was our recommendation to you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess that's at the basis, Robin, of what I'm saying is it's a porch. It really, and it's an attractive porch, and for that reason, since it's not a solid structure as a part of the house, I think that we have the discretion to approve this.
I concur.
Is either of those to be put into a motion?
The
other discussion?
Other thing is that does it contrast greatly with the other historic buildings around the structure, meaning the neighboring, because usually that's our conversations as well, is the mass and rhythm.
I would agree for infill construction. I think for additions, you're looking more about how it affects the historic home it's attached to, in addition to its context as well. But I think that's the first question. It's only 13 inches. It is a porch. It is a little bit below the front grade.
Sean, can you show us
I'm
the floor
thinking,
plan, please?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to talk to Sean real quick. Go ahead.
I was just to Mone's point. Now I've forgotten it. I've totally forgotten
It's a contrast greatly with the historical buildings.
Yeah, I already answered that one. I'll shut up.
I don't think it contrasts greatly, and I wouldn't say it's an addition. I would say the addition is the addition, and it's simply a porch. I don't think it's worth making much of a fuss over. And if we go back to Sean, could you take us back to the original image of the house? I can see the neighbor's porch from there. So, nobody made them take theirs to the center line of the house so that no one could see it.
I'm not necessarily in disagreement with the pursuit of our discussion, but let's be direct about it. That is different than this. That is in line with the side of the historic home, and what we're talking about is not. And I think that in the past, there is this, whether this one's a little bit or a lot, I think the staff's point is we've been encouraged not to do both. And if we're going to, in this case, if it's appropriate to do both, then let's, say it's appropriate and tie it back to the guidelines and move on.
All right.
Yeah, I will, but I need to hear the staff recommendations again so I can do this right. Okay.
The addition shall not be both taller and wider than the historic house, and the number and dimensions of the first-story windows on the right side of the house not be altered. That second one being a condition the applicant has agreed to.
I'll do it if you want me to.
Go ahead.
I move that the property located at 1709 Beechwood Avenue be approved, subject to the condition that the number and dimensions of the first-story windows on the right side of the house not be altered, but not subject to the condition that the addition shall not be both taller and wider than the historic house. And I'll add, because it is a porch and not an actual part of the structure of the home, if that makes sense.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion.
Carries. Right, you vote.
Yeah. No, it's 3-2. Yeah.
Well, then you have to vote then. No?
No. Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All opposed?
Oh, I'm taking mine down.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, so it's 3-2.
And you have to vote.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll vote to approve.
The chair will vote in the event of a tie or in the event that the motion did not receive the requisite votes. And it took 4 for that one.
Correct.
The motion passed as amended.
You're right, the motion was passed as
As presented.
As presented.
Yeah.
All right. 305A Scott Avenue.
This is a project for an infill duplex, and the applicant has agreed to all the conditions, so we will not be presenting unless there is a request to do so.
All right. Is there no questions of the staff? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address us on this? None. Oh, okay.
My name is David Baird, architect with Building Ideas Architecture at 5007 Wyoming Avenue. The owner has agreed to all of the standard conditions. Additionally, the owner has had conversations with several folks in the neighborhood, and there was one recommendation from the neighborhood, and that was to run the front porch all the way across the front of the house, as opposed to having a gap in the porches as shown in the front elevation. And the owner has agreed to it so long as the staff agrees to it. So the staff agrees. So we'll extend the front porch across the front of the house.
All right. Okay. And the staff is okay with that? All right. Okay. Thank you, David. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Brett Withers, and I live at 1113 Granada Avenue. I'm with the Neighborhood Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about this application today. I'm here to speak in favor of the staff recommendations for this application. The applicant has been very proactive in reaching out to me for preliminary feedback on the design, and through me to the rest of the neighborhood's board of directors and the immediate neighbors. The applicant also met early with the historic staff to ensure that the proposal met height, massing, and other requirements of the design guidelines. This combination of working with the staff early to determine an appropriate building envelope and with the neighborhood to adjust more discretionary elements of the design guidelines is a model that I think is worth repeating. As a little background as well, the applicant had originally pulled a permit for this parcel prior to the expansion of Eastwood's conservation overlay last March, and as it happened, that permit expired and was voided. But the purpose of our neighborhood's expansion of our overlay was not to inhibit growth, it was to make sure that growth happened in keeping with the historic historic character of our neighborhood. And so in this case, the applicant has acted in good faith to reach out to our neighborhood and by extension to the neighbors for feedback to be sure that once this application came forward today that everyone would be on the same page. And I believe that we are all on the same page. The discussion with the immediate neighbors about the preliminary plans was mostly positive. The overriding preference of the neighbors on Scott Avenue is for a design that closely resembles a single-family home. Even though symmetrical duplex forms with twin porches are approved in our district, the neighbors noted that Scott Avenue's streetscape is presently dominated by structures that are unmistakably duplexes, and almost all of those structures were constructed prior to the expansion of our overlay, but several of those buildings have a height and massing that is out of character with our historic nature and overshadows the many craftsmen and especially Queen Anne cottages that line our street. So in light of this visual domination of Scott Avenue by duplex structures, feedback from neighbors was that they really wanted this building to look like a single-family home as much as possible. And they felt that in some cases a symmetrical form with twin porches, while that would be approved typically, would be less desirable than a more asymmetrical form that would look more like a single-family home. At the same time, a lot of the new construction gabled L duplex structures that have been approved tend to have, while asymmetrical, looking more like one home, tend to have quite a bit of height and massing at the front facade. And so the staff recommendation in looking at the historic context recommended reducing that height and moving the height and massing to the rear, and that tended to not work as well with an asymmetrical gabled L form. So most neighbors with whom I have spoken appreciate that height reduction that staff recommended and request that in this case the best remedy to make this structure look like a single-family home would be to connect the front porch at the facade. And the applicant has been great in working with us to do that. And so we ask that the connected front porch be a condition of approval. And we also ask that once you, commissioners, render your decision on all conditions of approval, that the revised drawings be uploaded to the website for our neighbors' future reference. In closing, I wish to thank Jamie Reedy from Pantheon Development for his proactive outreach to our neighborhood and for the architect for incorporating many nuanced surfaces along the sides of the structure to help break up that massing a little further. This proposal will be a positive addition to the 300 block of Scott Avenue, and I urge your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Robin, it sounds like this applicant and your staff are all on the same page. Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we also want to make that addition about the porch extending all the way across the front?
I thought that was a condition.
It's not originally.
It's not originally a condition.
Okay. Motion to approve with the condition that the porch extend across the entire front facade.
All right.
Per staff recommendations.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm just going to do a short introduction really on this one. You have the more in-depth staff recommendations if you have any questions beyond this. Really, it's just a application to demolish a non-contributing house and construct a new house on the lot. Staff reviewed the application and found that it meets the design guidelines and recommends approval with the conditions that the floor height is compatible with that of surrounding houses, that the roof color, walkway material, windows, and door selections are approved by staff. The proportions of the left dormer that you see there are consistent on all four elevations, and that's it. Meeting those conditions, staff finds that the proposal meets the applicable design guidelines for the Greenwood Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. There is an applicant here if you have any questions, but if not...
Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I've made this comment before, but we've seen this, especially on the style of home where the porch columns kind of take on this funky sort of shape because of just construction practice, and that the base is the same width or smaller width than the columns. And in fact, if you look at one of the pictures, the base of the adjacent home, the base of the kind of the pre-ordered column is bigger than the stone base, which is typically not seen. I just encourage the builder to pay close attention to how they transition from pouring the slab on the top of that porch, and if you're laying block as it's shown, how all that works and that it works correctly and is done. There's a sequence of construction that oftentimes just doesn't work out in the end, that close attention be paid to that, so that the what we see drawn is what in fact is constructed.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions for staff?
I just want clarification, Sean. So what you're saying about the dormer or the roof line to the left, to the left of the pitched dormer, I can't say it right because I'm a lawyer, not an architect, and I don't know these words. Gable, thank you, gable. Is this the gable? What I'm asking is, you want that lowered to be in line, is that correct?
Well, I want it like it's drawn here on the front elevation. On the side elevation, it was drawn a little differently. It may have just been an earlier version that didn't get updated to match the front.
Okay, so you want it to lower.
Yeah, and the applicant has sent me revised drawings yesterday or this morning that corrected, so that one's
okay. I just wanted to clarify to make sure I understood what you were saying. I need to get my architectural words down like eyebrow.
So Sean, again, you and the applicant and your staff are on the same page. There's nothing outstanding here?
Nothing outstanding.
Okay, you're satisfied, and so is the applicant? Okay.
I believe so.
I move to approve subject to staff conditions. Is that
Well, I don't
too
think they're
soon?
ready yet. So
I was.
we need to do the public meeting.
We are in the public meeting?
No, we just.
Oh, those are, okay. All right. Is there anyone that would like to address the staff? Address the commission? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open for discussion.
You've already had that. That's for a motion. It's motion
time. Oh, is it motion time? Okay, I apologize. Okay, all right. Do we have a motion?
I'm trying to get it out. I move approval of the application of 913 Petway Avenue, subject to staff recommendations, or, yes, staff conditions.
All right, okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 104, 112, and 117 Ransom Avenue.
104, 112, 117. 104, 112, and 117 Ransom Avenue is an application for the construction of 3 of the 11 infill houses on the former site of the Ransom School. To date, 1 of the 11 houses has been constructed as part of this development. The commission approved the design of 4 other houses at the February meeting. Staff is recommending approval of all 3 infills with some standard conditions. Pretty much the only non-standard condition is that we're asking the height of Lot 9 to be reduced from 36 feet 2 inches to 35 feet. We've kind of said that 35 feet should be the maximum height for this development. I believe that the applicant agrees with all of the conditions, and so unless the commission has specific questions, we won't do a full presentation of the 3 houses.
All right. Okay. Are there any questions before we open the public hearing? All right. Open the public hearing. Are there those that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it for discussion.
Melissa, again, are you and your staff and the applicant all on the same page and everybody's comfortable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Move to approve for staff recommendations.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Take a break and I'll just lose it.
Somebody else had done it.
1518 16th Avenue South is an application for construction of an office building on this vacant lot. In brief, staff finds that the project meets the pertinent design guidelines, and the applicant has agreed to the conditions. The conditions are all the standard ones, with one added that the shutters proposed be operable shutters. That's the only one that's a little out of the norm. And I believe the applicant is here if you have questions for him.
Clarify that again. They're agreeable to everything except for number 2?
No, ma'am. They're in agreement with all of them. I just wanted to mention that that's the one that's, the conditions are the standard ones on materials and windows and doors and all that. That's the only one that I wanted to bring your attention
Abnormal.
to.
Thank you.
For discussion or a motion?
I make the motion to approve 1518 16th Avenue South per staff recommendation with conditions.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. 1602 Lillian. Oh, wait, no, it's 4017 Aberdeen.
4017 Aberdeen Road is an application for the construction of infill and an outbuilding. Similar to previous projects, staff is in agreement with the applicant on all of the conditions, so unless there is specific questions from the commissioners, we won't do a full presentation.
All right, any questions?
Don't think the applicant is here either.
No. We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that'd like to address the commission on this application? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Open for discussion or no motion?
Quick one for staff. It looks like the dormer that's over the first one is precariously close to the valley of the dormer. Is that, we may find that is constructed in a different spot. I don't know that it would have great, bearing on what we might approve, but certainly before we get
I can bring that to the applicant's attention just to make sure that it's,
that looks like that
might create some issues.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Move approval with staff's recommendation, and I guess any notation or correction about that front gable, certainly that the builder would make that part of the record, put that on record with the staff. But certainly, I think if construction required that it move over towards the side of the house and be proportional and/or centered, kind of within that frame, would be fine.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries with revision.
Here's 1602 Lillian. It's an application for the demolition of a non-contributing structure and construction of infill. Yet again, the staff and the applicant have worked out all the conditions, and we should be in agreement. I believe the applicant is here. So unless you guys have specific questions, we can move on.
I'm Lynn Taylor, the residential designer, and there's just one thing I would like to see if the staff can go ahead and set the foundation height. I noticed that they've done it in some other houses today, and in the past, several decades, they have set that. And it causes hardship on the contractor when you have to go out in the field and rely on one person to come by as staff and approve it. This house, and I have pictures here from, this is from Google Earth. The house on the right is historic. It's out of the ground maybe 3 blocks or something. The house to the left may have been built prior to the overlay, but it's still reasonable. I would like to request that the staff in the future either require the surveyor to locate the finished floor on each houses on the side and take an average so we can know what this finished floor is before the contractor starts bidding on it and building. What's happening now is we're letting one person, the staff, come out and move the house around. In some cases, in weird grades and hills and stuff, that's probably necessary. But on this lot, everything is in a row. There's a rhythm. And you could set it. You could say, take the average finished floor of 4 houses or 2 houses on either side. The surveyor can locate the finished floor. I have some surveys that have that on it sometime. This particular house we didn't. So we're asking for, we'd like 3 blocks out, and we think the house to the right has 3 blocks. It's covered up by lap siding. So what's in the past, it's not working really well right now for contractors and builders and not knowing where the finished floor is on some new houses. So we would like to go ahead and see if this commission will make a decision about 3 courses or 2 courses, whatever it is. The floor joists are probably going to be 10 or 12 inches. So, there's your height. You're going to know what it is. Here's an image that has some red lines. I don't know if I sent this to you or not.
You did.
Okay. But this has, it just shows like the house on either side. Like I said, the house on the right has one of those unusual skirts down and not typical of the neighborhood. So it's covering up the block, but you can see the finished floor of the house by the front door. So we'd like to either just say, line up make the finished floor that elevation, period, or the average of the 2 finished floors, 1 house on either side. If we can just go ahead and make that decision, it helps the contractor, the builder. And the foundation guy doesn't do it, he can tear off the block, or the framer, whatever, can tear off. At that time, you still have power to tell them to do that. But we would like a set floor height. That's all to have on that. If you have any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, Lynn?
Linda's, in the experience, I guess, and we'll have to rely on you, in the experience of general contractors you've been working with, do they wait any longer for staff to come out than they would for codes inspector to come and
They
do
are,
their thing?
and the problem is this. The person that comes out to the site tells someone to move it 12 inches or whatever. This happened to one of my clients recently. He does not give a written confirmation, an email, a text message, or anything that conveys and records what the conversation was. So if something happens to someone sick, hurt, injured, died, then it's like all up in the air, and you'd have to start all over or just trust that someone wasn't lying to you, like the builder or the property owner. So in the past, and I've been dealing with the historic and working with them since the late 90s, they used to make that decision. I mean, now Google Earth is so good, I can just go down the street on the internet, and you can see the houses, or again, you can make the survey people, it could be one of y'all's recommendations to locate the finished floor on each house to the left and right, which I'm going to start doing that so I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Some surveyors do it, but and I don't feel sorry for the block guys when they have to take a block off, because they just don't read the drawings half the time. They're the problem. They're the problem why the foundations get built up higher. Because sometimes they'll go out there and start before the contractor, the homeowner, the property owner even knows what's going on.
Ma'am, you keep saying when they come out. Who's coming out to move your foundation?
The staff person, Fred, at this time, he's the inspector.
With Metro
Staff.
Codes? With our staff? Okay.
Because here it says in the requirements, it says to be verified by staff in the field. And I think we can make that decision here today, or the staff could have made that decision. They have made that decision in the past. I see some of the new houses already have 2-foot courses. We submitted drawings. I can't remember now. Was it 3 feet or?
I think it was 2 feet, 3 blocks.
Okay, 3 blocks. And you can see from that drawing, that would be about where the other is. But if you're not comfortable with that, then you could say the average of the two houses, one on the left, one on the right. There's different ways to do it. That's what I'm saying, to make you feel comfortable.
In this case, and I wouldn't think you might draw a site section or a site plan every time someone purchases this particular design. In this case, it looks like that this lot is sloping front to back, and that by the time you pull the house down and they rough grade it, are you going to get, are they going to mash it down in the ground?
Well,
or what you're asking is to say it's 3 feet 4 as measured from the sidewalk or something. So that's what you're requesting.
Right. In this particular case, it is more critical, but it also helps with the bidding of the number of block and holding. There's a miscommunication between this note here and then the foundation guy. But in this particular case, we need to know grading and the cost of that. So, and also I'm trying to draw it accurately there on the side. And you're right, it does slope down.
I think to that end, and the reason, perhaps the reason for this thinking was that unless and until it's a chicken or the egg sort of thing, and I understand the frustration in a homeowner or a developer in this case getting an ad for an extra course of block or an ad for, hey, you got to import all this topsoil because the drawing says this, and suddenly you're way up. Really, that's more of the problem, is that we're way up out of the ground, and code-wise, you're usually not too close to the ground. Is that final grade is subject to so many different players. One being the guy on the bulldozer, what the rough grade is after you demo this house, and whether a retaining wall is put in or not. This indicates some sort of cut or severe cut towards the back of the lot. Point taken. We'll see if we can't figure out a way to set it so that it's just a verification and not everybody sitting around waiting.
Well, and again, y'all do it on some houses. I mean, I think you made a comment on a house that was a 4 square, it was either last month or the month before, about being 4 blocks out of the side, one on side, and then, so I'm assuming it was approved, that the finished floor height was approved. So we would like to, can we prove something today is what we're asking, just so we can have the drawings, construction drawings be more accurate. Thank you.
Anyone else? The public hearing, open up for discussion.
Question, I guess, for staff as policy. The on-site inspection of the foundation is both for, at least I think it's both for location on the lot and verification of that in terms of side setbacks, and then also, what our finish might be on height. What is there another? Tell us about what the processes are of what staff does in that.
Yes, there's an inspector. One of the things he does look at is the foundation, and that cannot change. That has to happen. We, as you well know, have a lot of people who are not quite as detailed as Ms. Taylor, and often assume the lot is flat when it's not. And so this has become such an issue that we've started adding this condition to all of the infill projects. If an applicant would like to provide us with more detailed information about the foundation heights to either side, that would be great. But with the information we have, it really needs to be field checked at this time. Either way, the foundation's got to be checked.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I think it should be checked. You still have to check it. I'm not saying not check
it. Okay. Would we be comfortable setting it today for this particular application?
I'm not. I think that it needs to be field checked.
Well, I think field check, but they're asking, I think she's asking for some guidance in how many blocks at this point.
And that information we don't have today.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Will we close the public hearing?
I have not closed the public hearing. Okay.
So I'm confused. You all can't tell me how many blocks out of the ground, but you want us to go build it. And I want you to clarify I'm wrong, Robin, but you want us to go build it to some level which I'm trying to get an answer on. Then Fred comes out and checks it, and if it's not the level Fred thinks it should be, then we have to take a block off. I'm not asking for, I think you have to verify the foundation. I think Fred has to come out and make sure that what's been built matches these drawings, because I know in the past we've had this issue, right? It gets built 4 feet, 5 feet out of the ground, which I hate. But I'm asking for a number, because right now it seems like we don't have any idea. Is it 3 blocks, 2 blocks, 4 blocks? That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking for not to check it. You have to check it, but you need to tell us. I
think in this case and on this design, without, and I think I've seen, or you have photographs of this house, it's not intended to have a railing, and so 30 inches would be kind of the maximum that this one would, as measured from grade, 30 inches, from the grade at the front, 30 inches would be, certainly seems compatible in most of the districts that we're in. I would think if you're, if you've got a slope like this and you're 30 inches, you're going to have real problems in the back of the house. So that would be a different scenario and a different situation.
I would assume and think, or I would think that the height of the floor needs to be, adequate or consistent with the rest of the houses. That would trump whether a house had a railing or not. But then a railing needs to be approved by you guys or staff, and I could resubmit that if we have to do that, which I think we will. I can submit that design. So I think a railing is kind of secondary, but you're right, it has to be approved. Again, I'm not asking for Fred not to come look at it. That's not, I just would like a number. It seems like I don't really have a number. So.
It sounds like you're asking us to set your finished floor elevation.
I am, and quite frankly, if you prove what I've submitted, I've got a number on there, so I can technically build it to that number, right?
Okay, yeah, right. And as I understand, I thought you were agreeable with staff on all their recommendations.
But it's number 1 here. It says finished floor height must be consistent with the finished floor height of the adjacent historic houses.
Okay, well that's too vague.
Saying is,
that's what I'm saying.
If one on either side are 28 inches average, and I'm going to set mine at 28, is that okay for today? I think that's what she's asking.
Okay, well we can't set your finished floor height. You're the designer.
But
you have to make that choice.
If I want to do it 4 feet out of the ground, are you going to let me?
You have to take that up with staff.
No, you're not. I just want a number. Like I want like make it match the house to the right, and I can do that. We can do that, or make it the average of the one house to the left or the right, or just tell me for this house how many block out of the ground.
I'm not doing that. Thank you.
You do it on other houses. You've done it.
I've never done it.
I think there's some houses today that have the guidelines don't say the same words as mine, and I could go back and research that.
Ma'am, I don't mean to argue with you, but you are the designer on this project. It's on you to set your own finished floor elevation and have it inspected. I'm a designer myself. I know the frustration you're talking about, but we can't sit here and give you a finished floor elevation.
Okay.
Put it on your drawings and take it back to the staff.
Anybody else would like to address the commission? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Further discussion?
I think the point she was trying to make is, can the staff be a little bit more, give more direction than just this comment? I mean, can it be, the finished floor height will be consistent with will be the average of the houses to the right or left, if that's applicable, and can something like that be added as a condition? I think that's what she's asking.
Well, and I think we would be requiring them to provide that information to us as the application came in.
Exactly.
I think it's just, can the staff do that? I don't know if they can or not,
And is it part of the italicized?
Yeah.
Is the staff asking? I mean, to me, it's like every other application. It's got to be consistent with the adjacent neighborhood, the other houses. You don't want it to be greatly at variance with what's there. That's the test. That's part of what we have to decide. And we have discretion to decide that based on the guidelines. So I think that's what Lynn, that we have to do. We got to judge that and make a decision on that. But we can't say how many, what do you call it? Bricks or what? Block. How many blocks it's got to be. I am going to go to architectural school after this and learn all these terms, but what we have to decide is it greatly at odds with the surrounding neighborhood?
In addition to that, the reason why we couldn't give you a 1 to 2 foot or 3 foot is because we're not a field inspector, we're not on the field, and so we don't know, and we could give you a number, and it could not be correct. We're not architects, he's the only architect, we're not a builder. So, to ask us to give a specific seems to be more limiting for you as well.
In this case, so what the recommendation says is that it should be consistent with the finished floor height of adjacent historic houses. Really, the house to the right is a historic house. The one to the left is new construction that was built prior to the overlay. So, I think the direction we could give is that if it matches the one to the right, and Fred would verify in the field, which is constructed, that the floor height and the foundation matches that to the right. And I think Lynn has done some research showing that she thinks it's about 2 to 3 courses. I think that we could come to a resolution by just saying if it matches the one to the right.
Well,
that should meet our guideline, and I'm not sure if that's enough direction.
Are you saying we're asking, is that something that we would be willing to put in a motion and you all would be comfortable with today?
Well, I think what she's saying is
let her answer.
Well, I'm just saying my interpretation of the first condition is that the condition says that it should be consistent with the finished floor heights of the adjacent historic houses. In this case, the one to the left is not historic, the one to the right is, so it would, in my opinion, be appropriate to match the one to the right.
And then, can I comment?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's right.
There's one across the street at 1601 Lillian Street, which we can also consider that. That's right across the street. And it looks to me to be very consistent with that one, with what they want to do.
I do think there's quite a bit of a slope in this part of Lockland Springs, so the one across the street might have a higher one than we'd want to see just because it's sloping up.
Slope.
Yeah.
I think we certainly want to consider left to right and not back, front, back. All right. Okay. Further discussion? Would anyone like to craft a motion?
So, Melissa, aside from this business about the finished floor, you did recommend approval of this project per staff recommendations?
Yes.
And the applicant is on board with all that?
Yeah, other than the first condition, we are on board with all the other.
Could you read me the first condition, please?
The first condition is the one that has to do with the finished floor height and the height of the foundation.
All right. Well, I move to approve the project per staff recommendations, omitting the first recommendation.
Well,
is that right?
I don't think, I think it needs to be field verified, but it's what direction we give her today in specifics. It still needs to be verified in the field.
I think that should happen between her and the staff. So how do I say this?
That is field verified.
Okay.
That would be staff. So the first condition would be staff verifying that height.
All right. I make a motion to approve the project per staff recommendations, adding that staff field verify the finished floor elevation or the height of the foundation. Specify, verify.
That was already the first.
Okay.
Is
that good enough?
No, that's not what she's asking for.
Yeah.
Well, you try it, Rachel.
Well, we have a motion. There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second to that motion? And the motion is that he is making a motion to
approve the project.
Approve per staff recommendation,
right,
as stated in this.
Right. Okay. That's how I understood it.
All right. So we have a motion to that effect.
Second.
All right. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All right. All in favor? Any discussion?
What she's asking and this discussion's going on way too long, is that that we say the foundation height can be set to be the average of the homes on the right and the left. And I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but I think that's what she's asking.
Well, that not necessarily, now, Melissa has said that it would be consistent with the historic home on the
right.
Whatever side.
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, I think that the one on the right and the one on the left are fairly close, so I think if you took the average of the two, you'd probably wind up with about the same foundation height, so.
So she's asking for us to say the foundation height should be the same as the house on the right. That it?
Or left.
The average?
The average of them.
On the right.
Okay.
On the right. Melissa says it to the right, okay. So it's just whether or not we want to do that
All
or
right,
not.
so we have a motion and we have a second, and we're discussing. Any other discussion? All right, so
Do we want to propose an amendment or no? I'm just looking to move on.
You're the one that made the motion, or would you like to entertain an amendment to that motion? No? Okay, all right. Then we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay? All right. Okay. 1701A and C, Blair Boulevard. for
We've got
preliminaries.
one more, ma'am.
One more?
407 South 14th Street.
Yeah, that's the one
I'm
on.
sorry. Okay,
And it'll be real quick. This is an application for a new single-family residence on this vacant lot. Staff has found that it meets the design guidelines, and the applicant has agreed to the couple of conditions that were recommended.
Okay. Questions of staff? Seeing none, open the public hearing. Anyone like to come address the commission? I'll close the public hearing. Discussion?
I like Commissioner's question to the staff. So did I hear or did I miss it, that this applicant is willing to work with all the recommendation conditions?
That's correct.
There you go.
Everybody's happy, huh?
Everybody's happy.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve.
Based on
And a
staff
second.
recommendation.
Any discussion?
I move to approve per staff recommendations.
All right, and a second. All right. Any discussion? Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, the preliminary SP review, 1701A and C Blair Boulevard and 2117 and 2121 Belmont Boulevard.
The project is for a multifamily development on what is currently 4 lots at the corner of Blair and Belmont Boulevard. All existing structures are non-contributing. The project requires a rezoning to an SP, so this proposal is for approval of the overall massing only. So if the SP is approved, by the Planning Commission, the project will return to the Commission for approval of all the final details. Details such as the one shown in this rendering are for illustration purposes only, just to give you an idea of what it'll look like, and should not be included in your decision-making. The front setback varies and steps back on each side to meet the historic setbacks on Belmont and Blair, and all the parking is hidden at the center of the lot within the buildings. The buildings will be 3 stories and will be 36 feet tall at its tallest point. The historic home to the left on Belmont and to the right across Blair Boulevard on Belmont are approximately 36 feet tall as well. Across Belmont Boulevard, the context gets even taller with between 40 and 60 foot tall buildings, so the project meets the requirements in terms of height. The roof form is a parapet roof, which is common on historic apartment blocks and commercial buildings in the district. So staff recommends approval of the massing alone with the conditions that a walkway be added to connect the rear units to the street, the finished floor height be consistent with the finished floor heights of the adjacent historic homes, to be verified by staff in the field. And if the SP is approved by the Planning Commission, the applicant will return to the Commission with a second application for review of materials, windows and doors, proportion and rhythm of openings, balconies and awnings, appurtenances and utility locations, and the overall detailing of the proposal. With these conditions, staff finds the massing of the project to meet the design guidelines for Belmont Hillsborough, and the applicant is here if you have any questions.
Okay, all right.
Question first, or just for clarity, the sidewalk request would be kind of extending it all and around the private drive. Is that the connection you're looking for?
Yes, and we haven't talked about exactly where, but it looks to me like what would make the most sense is right there, that side portion leading towards Blair.
Right. That's what I assumed we were kind of moving towards, but all right, great.
All right, any other questions, staff? I'll open the public hearing. Would you like to address the commission?
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Ward with Allard Ward Architects. We're excited to present the form of this project this month. We've had a lot of fun working with staff and all these setbacks and arrangements. It's been interesting to put this together. We're also very fortunate to be working with Evergreen Development. They have a lot of street cred in Nashville and do a lot of beautiful work. So we're excited to be on their team. But working with staff and sort of talking it through with the developer, we're sort of creating an archetype that's not typical for our neighborhood because it really is more of a townhouse product, quite frankly. However, and staff sort of recognize, and the neighbor's much happier with this concept than it would be a multi-level sort of flat arrangement. But the goal being to work with staff to create forms that seem sympathetic and sort of in keeping with a lot of the sort of larger apartment blocks around us. So that was a very important piece of that sort of massing exercise, and we've had a lot of fun doing that. And sort of working directly with Robin on what these street setbacks would be, and then sort of allowing us to sort of edge closer to the corner as we get closer to the intersection. Extremely helpful for us in trying to make these units fit and at the same time making it economically viable. So we're tickled to be involved, keep our fingers crossed. We're going to jump through. The neighbors keep asking when construction starts. I keep telling them we've barely even jumped through the first tube yet. So there's a long way to go, but I think we're working with a team that can pull it off. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we take an action? Okay. Anybody here other than one? Guess not. All right, I'll close the public hearing. And discussion, questions, comments? And then a motion to approve the SP, fundamental?
The massing of the project with the conditions outlined.
Okay.
Has this not gone to the planning commission or goes through us and then the planning?
Yes, if you agree, you approve the massing, then it goes to the planning commission. They approve the site plan and any other conditions as part of the SP, and then it'll come back to you a second time, assuming it passes planning, for approval of all those details.
This process was worked out to hopefully, while adding a step, not cause continual circling back or somebody to get so far down, a developer to get so far down the road with paying for fees and an architect to get down the road just kind of rolling the dice. I hope it goes and it becomes I don't know if it's more contentious as much as that this is more of a gated sort of approach in that the massing is probably pretty key to height and how it fits on the site and how it relates to its neighbors, and that's a good first step to take without getting too deep into it so that those adjustments can be made. Hopefully developments will fit in better. All that said, I move approval of 1701 A and C 2117, 2121 Belmont as meeting massing requisite to the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay Guidelines.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Just one more little piece of business for this evening, if you're interested and you have time. At the Nashville Civic Design Center tonight at 5:30, there are going to be a panel discussion on historic preservation and new development, and our director, Tim Walker, is one of the panelists.
Where is it going to be?
Nashville Civic Design Center on 2nd Avenue. I apologize, I don't remember the number, but it's Butler's Run. Thank you.
Oh, Wasn't sure if you said city center.
Who else is on the panel, do you know?
Just kidding. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Do you want this?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Toss it.
Heck with the motion.